What's up guys, my name is Marcel Flores, welcome to my YouTube channel, One Dapper Street, and in today's video I want to show you how you can quickly and efficiently edit your photos like a pro, honestly as simple as one click. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that together with 17 other influencers from around the world, we launched a preset bundle, over 150 different presets that are going to make it that easy for you guys to edit your photos. The link to check that out is down below. It's honestly like more than $1,000 worth in value for 60 bucks, and it's only available through Saturday, so make sure to check that out at the end of the video. Now I want to walk you through a little bit what you can do to make sure that those presets work to their best ability. And that starts first and foremost with the photo format. So raw photos versus JPEGs. I'm not gonna dive into this too much, but the main difference between a JPEG and a RAW is that you have a lot more control over the image with a raw photo. It doesn't have to be a super expensive professional camera. Many point and shoots have a RAW setting. You just have to select that so that you end up with files that you can easily manipulate even after you've taken the photo. When it comes to presets, there is one big thing, and we're gonna hop in the computer on a second to walk through what you can adjust or what photos are better for what filters. But the biggest thing is lighting. Some filters are made for photos that are darker, some filters are made for photos that are lighter. Some filters are made for specific colors, some are for others. So depending on what preset you buy, kind of look where those filters, like where those presets come from, what the original image is, so you kind of get an idea, okay good, for any darker image, I can use this filter. A good example from the 5 filters that I have in this pack would be the behind you filter, which was made for a backlit photo, but I want to preserve the background, so the front looks very dark, but since it's a raw photo, there is still information there, and this filter brings all of that back out and then puts a lot of ambiance and vibrance back into those colors. So lighting is a big thing. Don't be startled when some photos just won't work with some filters. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. But overall, if you like the general colors, then you can go in and make some adjustments. These filters do work on JPEGs as well, but with JPEGs, it's even more important that the photo is well lit or lit the same way that the preset was intended to work with. If you have a very dark photo where you lose a lot of the detail either in the blacks or in the whites, then that's information that can't be recovered, not by a preset, not by anybody, because it's just a JPEG. So make sure you shoot raw, and then let's check out Lightroom. So here we are in Lightroom on the desktop app, and I thought this was the best to show you guys. It's just as easy to do on the mobile app, whether that's on the iPad or on the iPhone. It's actually free on the iPhone, and otherwise it's $10 a month if you guys want to keep using this. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and there's great videos out there that explain all of the details. I'm just going to be focusing on the presets and what I think is essential to know about presets that you might have to adjust after applying them. So I want to work with 5 photos that I actually used to create my presets in the first place. This is one of them. So what you want to do is you want to go to the edit button on the top right. Then on the bottom, you'll see presets. So once you buy the preset pack, we're obviously going to be working with the presets that we just launched in our life and available to shop right now. You'll see them pop up right here. So you'll see the 5 that I submitted are called Behind You, Good Morning, Last Race Planted, and Rough Edges. This was the photo that I created last race with. So if I click on the last race filter, you'll see that this happens. So the colors obviously change significantly. This filter is done kind of paying attention to the skin color, which is definitely a little bit more orange, but in a stylized way. And the greens take on a little bit more of a bluish hue. Now, if you look at this photo, it obviously looks a lot different than it did to begin with. But I think this is actually a little bit too bright. So if I want to adjust that, I'm just going to pull the exposure down here a little bit down, and then that looks great to me personally. So the point of this being is that filters will do most of the work for you, but you still got to adjust sometimes. Exposure is one of the easiest adjustments. Any photo that is shot in the same location with the same light is then also going to look the same. So if we use that same filter again, last race, we notice that here it's a bit darker than it was before, but I'm still going to lower the exposure just a tiny bit. And now we have 2 photos, one right here and one right here, that work really well together. So especially if you're trying to edit sets of photos that you want to post together as a carousel on Instagram, filters are a great way to do so. The next filter I want to talk about is rough edges right here. This is what that looks like. Before we apply it, I want to kind of talk about the photo. You see that here, it's definitely a bit underexposed. It's a bit darker. There's no direct sunlight. The sky in the background isn't blown out. You can see a nice blue hue. So let's click on rough edges and apply the filter. Obviously, a lot of things change throughout the photo. The warmth changes, but we just want to focus on the things that you might want to fix after you've applied the preset. So one of the things that with this filter is that the clarification is pretty strong because we're dealing with a photo that was shot mainly in the shade. So this light, the exposure adjustment was in the light section before. Now we're going to move to effects over here. And you see that the clarity is something that's very high. So if I pull this down, you see everything becomes a bit more smooth and a bit more natural versus very extreme looks like this. The reason I'm pointing you out to just a few of these tools, like the clarity and like the exposure overall, is because I know that a lot of the presets out there are easily adjusted by using just that. So for one, like I said, presets are made for specific photos, so if that lighting isn't quite the same, the easiest way to adjust that and get the preset to work the way it was intended to is to use the exposure. And a lot of presets use a lot of the clarity effect because it's really cool. It makes a huge difference in a photo, so sometimes it makes a bit too much of a difference in a photo if you ask me. I left it in here on purpose because I kind of like, it's called rough edges. It's supposed to be a little bit gritty and a little bit sharper, but this is filter number 2. Next up, we got the filter planted, and I kind of pointed out the fact that colors play a big role in presets too. So this filter was made for greens, especially darker greens. You see how they get a nice warm tone, and it definitely looks very different than it did to begin with. You see the color in my skin changes a little bit, more saturated, a bit more orange, overall a bit more stylized. If you want to turn things down a little bit because it's too extreme for you, one of the absolute best tools in Lightroom is the following. If you go into color and you click this little circle to the top right, you get the color mixer down here, and then here you have this little target adjustment, which is incredible. You can choose whether you want to impact the hue, meaning the color itself, the saturation, how strong that color is, or the luminance, meaning how light or dark that color is. So if, for example, you say, hey, my face is a little bit too orange and you want to just take that part down, you select saturation, you click on the skin, and then you just pull it over a little bit up or down, and you see that you're really just adjusting that specific color. So with those 3 tools, between exposure, clarity, and this color picker tool, and I'll show you really quick what it looks like if we wanted to just make it brighter or darker. Same thing, you just click on luminance, click on the orange, and then you see that just the orange gets darker or brighter. With these 3 tools, you can adjust any of the presets. So you can take the general vibe that all of these creators that you see here on the right side give you, and then adjust it just a little bit to make it proper for the photo that you're dealing with. Same thing here, if it's shot in the same location with a similar lighting, this was actually shot in the other direction, then the filter still should work pretty well. You see that it reads a little bit different here, and now the clarification actually shows up a little bit more. So I'm going to go back in to the effects and just pull the clarity down to 0. And then we have, once again, 2 photos that are in the same vibe that work really nicely together. One last adjustment that we could make, once again, is just pull down the exposure a little bit so it's got a darker, more moody vibe to it, like this first photo right here. Now let me quickly cover the last 2 filters. We've got one that says good morning, it's in direct sunlight, it's soft light, but it's direct sunlight, and that's why this filter itself makes the photo a bit darker than it was to begin with. So if you're taking photos and you have a little bit of an overexposed skin that looks white and you can't really see the pigment in your skin, then this is a great filter to use. Last up, we've got the behind you filter, and that's because it's meant for photos where the sun is behind you. Now, if we look at the original image, you see that in the background, even though the front looks very dark, it needs to be shot this dark so you can still see some of the color in the background. If you exposed for the foreground and made it really bright, then the back would just be white, even if you're shooting in a raw file. So I adjusted to make it really dark, but you see that you can still kind of see the details in here. And as long as you can see those details with a raw photo, you can recover them. And that's the majority of what this behind you filter does. So it brings out all of those shadows in the foreground, but we still have that nice glow in the background, and that's what this filter was particularly made for. No further adjustments needed other than if you want to, face your face a little bit, any other small retouching details that aren't actually part of the editing process. Now let's take a photo that wasn't part of what I created with these presets and try and apply one of the 5 to see if it works with another one. If you look at this image overall, we see that it's fairly well lit. It's a bit on the darker side. There's some direct sunlight and we've got some nice background. So if we were to use the behind you filter, it's going to make it massively overexposed because in comparison to the other photo that we just looked at, it's not nearly as dark. So if I put this on, I'd have to put the exposure down a lot. And then you can see it actually kind of works. But I want to try and see if there's a filter in there that I can just by one click get a lot closer to the final product. Good morning seems to be a bit underexposed because this was meant for the direct sunlight in the morning. Last rays, as in the last rays of sun that you're catching, this works really well, I think. Then we've got planted, which makes it a bit more moody, a bit too red, I think. And lastly, rough edges, which could be another option, but I think in this case, last rays, as it was intended, works the best. So as soon as you click this photo is honestly good to go. You can crop it a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to try and make it perfect. And what are the 3 things that we're looking for? Either the exposure, but I think that's good. And then we have the effects in terms of clarity. I'm just going to pull the clarity down a little bit to make it a bit more natural. So you see the difference. This is with the clarity. You see a little bit of the hairline is accentuated. That's because there is a little bit of a difference, but the clarity brings that out. So I'm going to take the clarity out and just add maybe like 8, 9 in there. So we still get a bit more structure, but it's not overdone. Now this is a photo from the fall, and you see the color scheme overall is very different. We got black, we got brown, and none of the filters that I created are actually really meant for that. They're more spring, summer filters. So since this influencer preset pack doesn't only include my filters, let's try a few different ones and just go, say, look at Christina's. Christina Musacho, she made a black and white filter, which looks really nice for this. That's a bit too vintagey. Let me jump down towards the end. I know that I like a couple there. This is a bit too artificial, the oranges. And then this I think is really, really nice. So we got the difference before and after. This already works. I might want to bring down some of the exposure for this just to make it a little bit darker. Same thing over and over. It's super easy to take any photo, try any of these filters. If you have a general direction, adjust a couple of these small things and you'll be able to get insane looking photos really, really quickly. The last thing I want to talk about, and something important to note, that with all of the photos we looked at right now, skin tone is something that's very, very important. But the smaller you are, or if it's a landscape photo, skin tone is not important, and filters in general work a lot better because you don't have to worry about fixing the skin tone. So let's go to one of the influencers in here that are actually known as landscape photographers, like Aza. Now, a lot of her filters wouldn't work on a proper fashion photo because the skin tone just gets dragged into extremes. But these filters work better now that I'm, for one, smaller, but two, also the focus is a lot more on the landscape overall. So you can feel free to play around here. I actually really like this. It's got a nice mood, but I actually got to say I like the 9th filter the best. It's got a nice achromatic feel to it, but still somewhat of a warmth. So I hope you guys get how easy it is to make photos look great with these influencer presets. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and learned a little something, and I would love to see what you guys come up with if you decide to get this preset pack. There's a few other ones out there right now that other friends of mine are doing, so I know there's a lot of great presets out there, and I'm sure you're gonna find some that speak to you. Let me know if this helped you, and I would love to see the photos that you post on Instagram, so feel free to tag me and show me how you did with your editing. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you soon with the next one. Until then, stay dapper and edit your photos in a dapper way.